Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back to Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. The trucker convoy that has been moving across Canada from British Columbia to Ottawa and has for the past couple of days caused a gridlock in Ottawa in protest of mandates and lockdowns that have occurred across Canada by the federal government and by different provincial governments to force people into being vaccinated. They're protesting more specifically the mandate that would cause some truckers to lose their jobs because of these mandates. But it's not just the truckers that are losing their jobs over the different mandates. It is also healthcare workers have lost their jobs. There are others because the mandates not only state that you have to have the first and second rounds of vaccination, but now they're mandating that we keep up with all the boosters. There is a question out there by a lot of people: where will it end? How much longer is it going to take to get to the end of the pandemic? And there's some of the questions that is caused this convoy protest to begin with is because our government won't share any of the answers. They won't share what is truly going on, and they're being closed off and just slapping up mandates and orders rather than having a discussion with people about what is actually happening. You're going to hear from Justin Trudeau in response to the truckers moving across Canada and tying up Ottawa with a gridlock. You're also going to hear from Aaron O'Toole, who is also going to talk about it. And more recently, that the whole thing is being hijacked by hate groups. This wasn't started as a hate movement or a white supremacy thing, but they're trying to tie themselves to it, and they're attempting to hijack what is a protest just as to question what is going on, to wake people up and make them think more about and ask more questions, ask harder questions out of what is going on with the pandemic. And now it's being hijacked, one by politicians, as everybody in it has to be anti-vaxxer, and now the hate groups are jumping on board and trying to take it over for actions with white supremacy. We, as the people watching this, we shouldn't be we should be putting up with it. We should be cheering those who are just trying to get more information so that we can do the right thing for our communities and move forward with our lives. and however the normal is going to be. So let's listen firstly with Aaron O'Toole, then we'll listen to Justin Trudeau as he speaks about this protest, and then we'll switch over to a couple sound bites from the City of Ottawa.
Good evening. I was going to have remarks today based on our two-day caucus meeting and the report on our election result, but I'm not going to read my speech tonight because I've never seen the country more divided, and I've never seen a time that we need to come together more than now. After 2 years, Canadians are tired. They're tired because they've followed the rules. We've worked from home. Our kids have not been in school. We've shifted our life. Most Canadians got the jab. We've all been trying to follow the rules. And this year started out just like last year, with lockdowns, with curfews, with division. And that's only getting worse. And the thousands of people coming here in the next few days, the trucker convoy, is a symbol of the fatigue in our country right now. The very fact that the Prime Minister won't listen or hear these voices shows the degree of division that exists in our country. Après 2 ans, les Canadiens, les Québécois sont tannés. Après les confinements, les couvre-feux, beaucoup de divisions dans notre pays et les camionneurs sont un symbole de ça. C'est le temps pour notre pays d'unir, de respecter tout le monde et de travailler ensemble contre la COVID-19. Conservatives will always stand up and fight for anyone who wants to work hard and provide for their family. That is why we've always had issues with mandates. We don't believe anyone should lose their house, their family, and their livelihood because of this pandemic, particularly when if we'd planned better, we would have the tools to manage COVID-19. The very fact that we don't have these tools by the 5th wave of the pandemic is a failure of the Trudeau government. And rather than delivering, we see further and further division. So the dignity of a job of any type is something I will always stand up and fight for. And what concerns me now, a couple of years ago, we were calling truckers, we were calling grocery store clerks, our essential workers, we were calling them heroes. Now, too many people are allowing the frustration of the pandemic to allow ourselves to become divided, to allow the majority to be so frustrated with the minority that we're willing to see people lose their livelihood, lose their faith in this country. And that will cause permanent damage long beyond COVID-19. So I will always fight for the trucker, the essential worker, the Canadian who wants to work. And so will any member of the Conservative caucus. The question is, why would Prime Minister Trudeau not stand up for working people? The convoy itself is becoming a symbol of the fatigue and the division we're seeing in this country. So tomorrow I will be meeting with truckers to hear their concerns, to talk about the proposals I brought 3 weeks ago to try and make sure we can keep grocery store shelves full, keep people working, and work together. And I would ask Canadians that are frustrated by the convoy or frustrated by people that may not yet be vaccinated. Let's work together as a country. Let's not give up on anyone. Let's come together like we did in the first wave of this pandemic, with compassion, with the ability to overcome the frustrations we all feel. Il y a beaucoup de frustration après 2 ans d'une pandémie, mais on doit travailler ensemble pour tout le monde, incluant les camionneurs. Et c'est pourquoi les conservateurs vont toujours lutter pour les Canadiens qui veulent travailler pour leur famille. Personne ne doit pas perdre leur emploi à cause de la pandémie. C'est possible d'utiliser les autres outils pour protéger nos concitoyens, d'utiliser les tests de dépistage rapides, les règles sanitaires pour préserver notre qualité de vie. It's the type of leadership we're not seeing from Justin Trudeau. This convoy, in many ways, represents people who feel they do not have a voice in Ottawa. I want you to know, as we did in the election, we will try and make sure that everyone has a voice and no one is left behind in the pandemic, in the cost of living crisis, in the housing crisis. The Conservatives will always stand up for working Canadians, and we will always try and find ways to bring this country together. So I'm appealing to people. Let's ensure that voices can be heard. Let's ensure that protests are peaceful. And let's try and work together to manage COVID-19, to reopen safely, and to not condemn one another at a time that we need to come together. So the Conservative Party has met. We've talked about our election, but our most important guiding principle is that we will always be here for people that don't feel they have a voice in Ottawa. They don't feel they have the lobbyists or the big influence within the Liberal Party to have their voice heard. Whether it's a small trucker, whether it's someone working a shift at a grocery store, whether it's a fisherman or someone in a mine in Northern Ontario, we will always be your voice. We will always respect you. And we will always try and bring solutions to this country, not division. Nous sommes le parti fondateur de notre pays et on va travailler très fort pour le bien-être des Canadiens, des Québécois, et c'est le temps de trouver des solutions pendant la pandémie, pas beaucoup de division. So the Conservatives have a plan, and we'll be ready to act on that plan. Some of you may have questions on the actual coming report, but I'm happy to take any of your questions now.
On m'indique qu'il y aura 6 questions avec suivi. I'm told there will be 6 questions with follow-up, and I'm alternating between the room and the phone line. So first question, microphone 1.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Rachel Haynes here from CTV National News. A few days ago, you were asked multiple times about whether or not you were going to meet with this trucker convoy. You said that it wasn't up to the opposition leader to meet with these protesters, but obviously you've changed your mind on that. So I'd like to ask you, why did you change your mind on that? And did you get pressured from your caucus today to meet with the trucker convoy?
Rachel, I have not changed my mind. As you know, as CTV reported, 3 weeks ago, we talked about a solution to avoid this crisis. A solution that could allow grocery store shelves to be filled and public health to be preserved. We've always stood up for people that need to work and can work, and that we shouldn't divide people over their personal health choices in a pandemic. So we will continue to work with truckers, with all groups, with the Chamber of Commerce, to make sure that people don't lose their job and that we fight COVID-19 together. So I will, as I said a few days ago, I will be meeting with truckers. I will be meeting with parts of the convoy. I will try and do it outside of the Hill core so that it can be done effectively, and we can continue our advocacy to make sure people don't lose their house, their home, their family because of this pandemic.
Thank you. And I'd like to just follow up a little bit right there. You said you're going to be meeting with them outside of the Hill core. However, they are coming to Parliament Hill to demonstrate. So if you don't mind giving a few more details about some of the conversations you've been having and where you're going to be meeting them. And as my other follow-up as well, a lot of your caucus members have been showing support over the last few days for some of the other caucus members who have been pretty vocal, like Mark Strahl, for instance, praised the leadership that Pierre Poilievre and Andrew Scheer have taken. So did you change your mind on meeting with these truckers because you were feeling undermined by your other caucus members?
I'm proud that our caucus will always stand up for their constituents and always stand up for people that want to work. We stood up on this position in an election almost every day. I'm very proud of the fact that Melissa Lantzman, Ben Lobb, Alex Ruff were advocating in December for a solution for truckers. It's how I started my year, providing solutions, not division. This convoy is really about Mr. Trudeau and the fact that people are tired. There's a fatigue in this country, there's division, and there's millions of people who feel they're no longer being heard. I want them to know that our MPs, our senators, and the leader of the Conservative Party will always be there to hear their voice.
I had asked also about you meeting off the Hill with the...
Next question.
Mike 2.
I'm Stephanie Taylor with the Canadian Press. I'd like to know how you think your speech tonight is helping. There are reports of some pretty extreme elements in this crowd, some violence towards journalists. There's reports that MPs are being warned. Some folks associated with the convoy are trying to get their address, and you're saying this is all the Prime Minister's fault. So how are you helping the situation when the country is so divided?
The country is divided, Stephanie, and it's a time as Canadians we need to come together. Everyone in a democracy deserves to have their voice, not just in an election, not just on the ballot box, but throughout this pandemic. People are worried, people are tired. I speak to parents all the time. Our own family feels that. Everyone should feel they can get a hearing here in Ottawa. That is why we're proposing solutions for the truckers, for other parts of our economy that are struggling right now. And it's also why our MPs have been listening to and meeting with working Canadians, including truckers. There are other groups using the plight of truckers to bring division, hatred, and we need to call that out and stamp it out because it's also depriving people's ability to have their voice heard in Ottawa. So I'm calling on everyone, regardless of how you feel about the pandemic, whether you're Liberal, Conservative, NDP, let's call for calm. Everyone deserves to have their voice heard in a peaceful protest that is a democratic right. So let's take the temperature down and make sure we work together as Canadians in a time of crisis, not against one another. C'est le temps de travailler ensemble en pleine pandémie. Et chaque Canadien, chaque Québécois mérite une voix ici à Ottawa, incluant les camionneurs. Et il y a des autres groupes qui vont utiliser le convoi pour leurs intérêts, pour l'aine, pour les manifestations, mais c'est injuste aussi. On doit respecter la manifestation en paix, mais c'est pourquoi les conservateurs vont être là pour tous les Canadiens, mais j'aimerais voir une de-escalation des tensions.
I'd like to know how you think Andrew Scheer saying Justin Trudeau is the biggest threat to freedom in Canada is taking the temperature down. Same with other of your MPs and critics, frankly, saying that he's pushing a vaccine vendetta. How are these statements taking the temperature down in the country?
We all have to play a role to take the temperature down. There is frustration out there, Stephanie, and I know it. Our caucus knows it. I'm sure Mr. Trudeau knows it. This is why we have not supported approaches that sees pink slips in the pandemic. This was an issue Mr. Trudeau used to divide in the election, and it's caused division. So let's take the temperature down. Let's propose solutions. Let's make sure nobody loses their house, their family, their livelihood in a crisis. We can now, at the fifth wave, manage COVID-19 in a way that's safe, effective, and fair. So I'm willing to work with all parties, all provincial governments, to take the temperature down and make sure that nobody thinks their voice isn't welcome or warranted in Ottawa. You shouldn't have to have friends in high places or lobbyists to get your voice heard in Ottawa. That is why we will be meeting with many different truckers and many different industry groups over the coming days.
Mike 1.
Good evening, Mr. O'Toole. Marc-Andre Cossette with Global News. Organizers of this weekend's truckers' demonstration have promised that the protest will be peaceful, but we do know that Ottawa Police has said it is planning for the potential risk of violence. We have seen more than a few supporters at this point saying that they hope the demonstrations will turn violent, some comparing it to last year's January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. There are concerns about extremists infiltrating this movement. How concerned are you about those extremist elements that seem to be latching on to this protest?
Let's call out extremist elements and make sure that they're called out and flagged. In fact, the truckers themselves need to make sure their voice is heard. And we know, and I'm glad the organizers are trying to make sure that other groups aren't using the plight of working Canadians to advance issues of discrimination, of hate, of chaos. As someone who served in the military, protecting our institutions and our democracy and our rights is critical. And I think we all have a role to make sure that there's peaceful protest and zero tolerance for anybody promoting violence, promoting hatred or discrimination. We all should take a role to make sure that is called out.
Journalists covering the convoy so far have been subjected to vile abuse, physical assault, even death threats for their coverage. Meanwhile, your predecessor, Mr. Scheer, has accused journalists of working overtime to discredit the protesters. Your finance critic, Mr. Poilievre, has also criticized journalists for exposing extremist elements that have attached themselves to this protest. Do you condemn threats against journalists, and what conduct do you expect from your caucus in the coming days, given that among the people who plan to protest peacefully, there is a documented presence of extremists, some of whom are calling for harm to journalists?
I respect the job journalists do. In fact, it's a critical job in our democracy. I'm in this room often. I often will disagree sometimes with the exchanges we have, but what our democracy needs is a bright light on everything. And that's what I want to see. There should not be violence or intimidation against anyone, including members of the press. And we have to make sure that Canadians that are just trying to make sure their voice is heard don't have their voice stolen by other groups that use that attention to advance sinister or other motives. And this is what we're going to have to try and make sure happens, which is why I'm calling for calm, which is why I'm calling for those groups to not steal the voice of these working Canadians, and why we have to make sure that the division, the frustration, and the emotion in this country right now does not boil over.
And we'll now take questions from the phone. Operator, do we have a first question?
Thank you. The first question is from Catherine Lévesque, National Post. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Just going back to the protest, who will you be meeting with specifically, and when and where will that meeting be taking place?
We have been, as a caucus, including Melissa Lantsman, our shadow minister, and many of our MPs have been speaking with individual truckers, with organizations, with hauling companies. We're in the process now of firming those up. What I've been trying to do over the last few days is try and make sure that I can speak to representative truckers from each part of the country that are here. As I've said, I think everyone deserves to have their voice heard. This needs to be a peaceful protest, but at a time where a lot of people feel that they're being shut out of discussions here in Ottawa, we have to make sure that those voices can be heard in a way that's effective and safe.
Okay, so just to follow up on that, do you have a meeting set, or are you trying to have a meeting? And I just had another question on the report. I just wanted to know if you confirm that you accept all of the recommendations from the coming report, and what will change specifically going forward in your party and in your leadership?
Well, thanks. A question on the coming report. Our caucus heard the report today. Our National Council and our Conservative Fund will all be briefed on the coming report. its review of what went right, what went wrong, and its recommendations. Some of those relate to me. Leadership starts at the top. There were areas I fell short, including especially in the last 10 days. There were areas where our policy, our tour, other things fell short. And a big learning is our need to reach out to new Canadians, cultural communities that are such an important part of this country because of the pandemic and because of some of our own policies of the past. We have to build trust, particularly with cultural groups. And so there'll be a commitment and a set of plans that come out of these meetings where our caucus, our party, and the entire Conservative Party organization will commit to plans based on these recommendations, because we have to make sure we bring more Canadians into our party, make sure that their voices are being heard so that we can win the next election. On a reçu le rapport de James Cumming et on a reçu beaucoup de recommandations sur moi, sur ma performance pendant la campagne, particulièrement dans les 10 derniers jours. On a reçu des recommandations sur les politiques, la tournée, et maintenant notre caucus, nos partisans et nos fonds vont travailler sur un plan basé sur les recommandations de M. Cumming.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, Justin Lee, freelance. Please go ahead.
Hi there, Mr. O'Toole. Thank you for doing this press conference. Listen, I'm wondering, the organizers of this convoy have espoused anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, racist, hateful views. One of the chief organizers has said there's no way to solve this problem without bullets. You know, these people, the organizers themselves, have been tied to groups like the Soldiers of Odin, a hate group. To be totally blunt with you, Mr. O'Toole, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Identifying with this group, meeting with them. The Parliamentary Security has actually encouraged MPs to avoid the protests altogether because they've been doxing MPs' home addresses. What are you thinking?
Justin, you're identifying me with those groups. I am not. In fact, as you know, 3 weeks ago, I proposed something for truckers specifically. There was no mention of a convoy. The truckers are working Canadians who are frustrated, who in some cases are losing jobs because of mandates. Mandates we opposed in the election and proposed alternate tools to keep people safe and the economy moving. A lot of those mandates, the restrictions, the lockdowns are causing a fatigue in this country. In fact, the truckers' plight is a symbol. And the convoy is being used by others. So I condemn all those groups, Justin, and I would hope after my work on the Hill for almost 9 years, you would know that I do. But I want to make sure that if people are worried about losing their home, they're worried about their kids' well-being, and they think that Ottawa is ignoring them and they're tired of lockdowns, I will always make sure I listen to them while condemning the conduct you're talking about.
Respectfully, Mr. O'Toole, no one would criticize you for meeting with truckers skeptical of the mandate. But the organizers of this rally, the folks who put it together, the folks who collected the money, the folks who organized the routes, who are keeping in touch with the segments of this trip, they're the ones who are involved with these groups. So how can you say you condemn it when you're willing to meet with the very organizers who are pushing these troubling views?
Justin, once again, I'm meeting with truckers that are part of the convoy. I'm not meeting with the organizers of the convoy. In fact, from what I understand, some of them oppose the Conservative Party of Canada. I want to make sure that people along the way, which is why I've been trying to meet a cross-section of people from different parts of the country, have their voice heard. And I will, with my loudest voice, condemn anyone that is using the plight of people frustrated with the pandemic or frustrated with losing their job to advance harmful, discriminatory, or hateful messages. And I don't think it helps when we're trying to suggest we're going to listen to Canadians who are frustrated, that we're in some way endorsing people that are connected to this. I can't say it enough. People that are frustrated, that are working Canadians that just want to be heard, I will make sure we always are there to listen. People that are advancing horrific agendas, I will make sure I call out that conduct and try and rally the better angels of the nature of Canadians at a time that our country's divided, at a time we're still at a time of crisis.
On m'indique que c'est la dernière question. I'm told this is the last question on the phone.
I'll take everyone at the mics right now.
Monsieur Scheer dit que Monsieur Trudeau, c'est la pire menace aux droits des Canadiens. Est-ce que c'est vrai?
Tout le monde sont fatigués. Tout le monde sont frustrés, particulièrement avec le gouvernement. Et M. Trudeau est le Premier ministre. Il y a beaucoup de frustration avec les politiques de confinement. Et après 2 ans, on n'a pas un approvisionnement suffisant des tests de dépistage rapide. On a seulement des confinements pour lutter contre la COVID-19. Les Canadiens, les Québécois méritent mieux que ça. Et comme chef, je vais avoir une autre approche, une autre tonne sur quelques enjeux. Mais notre équipe, les Canadiens en général, sont fatigués après 2 ans.
Je remarque que vous avez répondu à ma question qui parlait des commentaires de M. Scheer. Je vous pose cependant une autre question, si je puis. Vous dites que le convoi est légitime, mais vous n'allez pas rencontrer les organisateurs, parce que les organisateurs véhiculent des messages de haine et de violence. Est-ce que, et tout à l'heure dans votre déclaration, vous avez dit « je vais rencontrer » et vous avez laissé un peu vague camionneurs et convois. Il a fallu qu'on vous pousse pour que vous expliquiez tout ça. Est-ce qu'en entretenant ce flou-là, vous n'êtes pas justement en train de donner une légitimité au convoi?
Non, j'ai dit les camionneurs sont légitimes. Et les inquiétudes avec les camionneurs, les personnes qui peuvent perdre leur emploi à cause des mesures pendant la pandémie. Et pendant l'élection, j'ai proposé des autres mesures. On a perdu l'élection, mais c'est pourquoi je me pose les mesures strictes comme ça en pleine pandémie. Et c'est pourquoi je vais toujours être là pour les travailleurs canadiens, québécois, tout en opposant les manifestants et les groupes d'aide.
Ian Bailey, Globe and Mail. 2 questions on the Cummings report. Have you made changes to your office, or will you be making changes to your office as a result of the Cummings report?
Thanks, Ian. The Cummings report we just discussed as a caucus today. The National Council and Fund, I understand, are being briefed on it today or tomorrow. The intention here is to make changes. Myself as leader, I'm responsible for the loss. And I want to make sure that we gain the confidence of more Canadians. So I will make changes myself to our team, to our strategy, and within our party. And our MPs and our entire party structure will be part of that change.
What did you learn from the Cummings report about your own personal political style that will change your outreach to Canadians seeking their support before and during the next election?
There's a lot I had to learn, and there's a lot that went well. There's things that didn't. And this is the first time our party's ever been forthright like this, and I hope Canadians see it for what it is. It's our attempt to make sure that we learn, we win your trust. And I did these type of reviews in the military and in the private sector. The studio cut me off from meeting more Canadians. We were told that we should have been doing more events. I got comments that in the last week of the campaign, I seemed too scripted. I'm sure everyone in this room probably agrees with that. We didn't address certain issues that Canadians wanted us to have policies on. And we didn't showcase some of the great policies that we had for Western Canada, for example, enough during the campaign. And all of these decisions are my responsibility, but I think making sure that I can perform better, that we can make sure there's more ability to connect with Canadians. And I'll be honest for a second, if I can take a follow-up to your question. I want to get out there and meet more Canadians in person, not on a studio and not on Zoom. And so I'm as frustrated as so many Canadians working from home, working virtually. It's not the same connecting with Canadians. It's part of the reason I will be trying to meet with a few people that have driven dozens of hours to come to Ottawa. I'll make sure it's done properly. But that personal connection is something our whole society is missing. And it's why I think we have to manage COVID. And it's also why we have to make changes so that I can get that chance to connect better that I haven't really had during the pandemic.
Bonjour, Inès Lombardo de Franco Presse. Est-ce que, de 1, vous pouvez répéter ça en français? Et de 2, me dire pourquoi est-ce qu'il apparaît que vous ne vouliez pas que le rapport post-mortem des élections soit intégralement donné à vos députés et aux sénateurs au caucus? C'est en 2 parties.
OK. Il y a beaucoup de leçons pour moi comme chef dans le rapport de M. Cumming. Je dois améliorer mon performance, particulièrement sur les réponses pendant la dernière semaine de la campagne. Le studio était efficace, mais pas moins efficace qu'une tournée en personne. Il y a beaucoup de recommandations et notre parti, nous sommes en train d'examiner et planifier basé sur les recommandations. Le rapport de M. Cumming, nous venons de discuter dans notre réunion. Tous nos députés vont voir le rapport. Nos membres de notre conseil, de notre parti, vont examiner les recommandations aussi. Et dans les prochaines 2 ou 3 semaines, on va commencer d'avoir un plan pour améliorer nos processus, ma performance et nos politiques, nos médias sociaux, nos données et les mesures dans le rapport.
Ok. Vous aviez mentionné plus tôt que vous alliez donc rencontrer le convoi qui arrive. On ne sait toujours pas si c'est les organisateurs ou les personnes qui font partie de la manifestation. J'aimerais savoir ce que vous allez leur dire et si vous pensez donc, je rebondis sur la question de mon collègue, si c'est légitime ou non.
Comme j'ai dit, les camionneurs qui sont inquiets avec leur emploi ou avec les mesures sanitaires sont légitimes. Et les autres déconnectés par les camionneurs qui vont utiliser le convoi sont une force mauvaise maintenant. On doit unir notre pays après 2 ans d'une pandémie, après beaucoup de déconfinements, des couvre-feux. Comme j'ai dit au début, les Canadiens, les Québécois sont fatigués, sont tannés et on doit utiliser toutes les mesures. Les vaccins sont primordiaux, les tests de dépistage rapides et toutes les mesures pour respecter tout le monde et de travailler ensemble en pleine pandémie. C'est le temps pour notre pays d'unir. Et c'est le temps pour tous les partis de respecter les voix de tous les Canadiens. It's time for our country to respect all voices, to ensure that people can be heard, to denounce division and hate, but at the same time, make sure that people that are worried about their children, their home, their livelihood, can always know they can come to Ottawa and have a voice. And thank you for the work you do, and I hope everyone stays safe in the next few days. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Hello everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Ce matin, je veux m'adresser aux millions de Canadiens qui font des choix responsables pour s'assurer de leur sécurité et celle de leurs proches. Je sais que cette pandémie est frustrante. It's frustrating that after 2 years, the battle against COVID-19 is still dominating so many parts of our lives. This virus affects us all. 2 of my own children have now contracted it, and this morning I learned I tested positive for COVID-19 as well. I feel well and have no symptoms. Of course, I'll be working remotely this week and will keep following public health guidelines. I want to take this opportunity to remind Canadians to please get vaccinated. It's a challenge that my family and I are facing, but there's nothing unusual or special about it. It's a challenge too many Canadians and people around the world know all too well. Durant cette pandémie, il y a des gens qui ont perdu des êtres chers. Nos travailleurs de la santé continuent de faire un travail acharné. Les scientifiques travaillent jour et nuit pour s'assurer qu'on ait des vaccins pour se protéger. This pandemic is not over, and we have to be there for one another. And as we continue to have each other's backs, as we steel ourselves for the challenges ahead, I know you're wondering about what you saw in our capital city this weekend. As my friend Irwin Cotler said on Saturday, freedom of expression, assembly, and association are cornerstones of democracy, but Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials are not. It is an insult to memory and truth. Hate can never be the answer. Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. La statue de Terry Fox et la tombe du soldat inconnu ne sont pas seulement des symboles du passé. Ce sont des points marquants de notre histoire qui représentent des héros canadiens et les valeurs pour lesquelles ils se sont battus. Les sacrifices de ces héros nous ont donné la chance de bâtir un Canada meilleur. Tous les Canadiens ont le droit d'exprimer leur opinion ou leur désaccord avec leur gouvernement, mais ils n'ont pas le droit de menacer ou de harceler leurs concitoyens, ni de propager des messages de haine. I want to thank the many Canadians who've made donations to the Shepherds of Good Hope and to the Terry Fox Foundation in response to what they saw this weekend. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop. To anyone who joined the convoy but is rightly uncomfortable with the symbols of hatred and division on display, join with your fellow Canadians. Be courageous and speak out. Do not stand for or with intolerance and hate. En ces temps difficiles, tous les politiciens doivent démontrer du leadership responsable. On doit travailler pour rassembler les gens de manière positive. On doit lutter contre la division et la peur avec les faits. To the politicians exploiting people's fears, I ask you to think long and hard about the consequences of your actions. To the nearly 90% of truckers across the country who've gotten vaccinated, who continue working hard to keep us fed and keep our economy moving, thank you. Truckers have tough jobs. Long hours on the road, days away from their families. Real challenges, particularly over the past 2 years, as they've continued to step up to put food on our shelves and on our tables, to support us with life-saving medication and supplies. We have relied on you, and you can rely on us to continue to stand with you and allow you to do your jobs safely. Almost 90% of you are doing exactly that, exactly that, and we thank you deeply for everything you've done. The behavior on display this weekend does not represent you. And to Canadians at home, watching in disgust and disbelief at this behavior, wondering how this could have happened in our nation's capital after everything we've been through together, this is not the story of our pandemic, of our country, of our people. Canada is strong because you are strong. Pendant près de 2 ans, les Canadiens ont fait preuve de force, de générosité et de respect. Vous avez démontré votre courage. Vous avez fait d'énormes sacrifices. For nearly 2 years, you've been there for each other as neighbors, friends, and fellow Canadians. I think of the moms and dads who looked after their families, the kids who stepped up in so many different ways, seniors who stayed strong in our darkest days, volunteers throughout our communities who supported our most vulnerable, frontline workers from truckers to store clerks who've kept our shelves stocked and made sure we have food on our tables, healthcare heroes who've saved countless lives and continue to do so. We know you're tired, and yet you do not stop. You inspire us. Canadians support you. We're in your corner. All of you are the story of this pandemic, not the convoy. Cette pandémie, c'est aussi l'histoire de millions de personnes qui ont fait les bons choix, qui se sont fait vacciner et qui ont fait des sacrifices pour assurer leur sécurité et celle des autres. Je peux vous dire que je vais continuer d'encourager les gens à se faire vacciner, que ce soit pour les doses de rappel ou les vaccins pour les enfants. Je vais continuer d'être là pour vous. I wish I could tell you that there are no more difficult moments ahead. But we all know I can't say that. What I can say is that this government will continue to have your backs. We will continue to be there for you as long as it takes, with as much as it takes. That's how we've all gotten through this pandemic so far, and that's what we and I will continue to focus on. Because we believe in you. Canadians are compassionate, kind, strong, and resilient. You elected us all to get big things done, and with the return of Parliament, we all have work to do. Later today, I'll be participating in question period, an important part of our democratic system, alongside parliamentarians who, despite threats and intimidation, will continue to serve you, Canadians, and work together to deliver results for people. This afternoon, we'll be introducing legislation to ensure we continue providing as many rapid tests as possible to the provinces and territories. And tonight, I'll be virtually addressing the House of Commons about the situation in Ukraine. I'll be talking about the importance of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law in the face of Russian provocation. In this difficult time, more than ever, we must stay true to our values, to who we are as Canadians. As Canadians, we stand up for what's right, and mostly, we stand up for each other. That's how we've gotten through this so far. That's how we'll continue to get through this. That's how we remain true to who we are. Merci, mes amis.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now start the question period for 20 minutes, starting with the phone today. Opératrice, c'est à vous.
Thank you, merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur l'étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. The first question is from Mia Robson, the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm wondering, a lot of the leaders or organizers of this convoy have asked to meet or at least hear from you about what's happening in their demand? Have you or will you or anyone from your government meet with them or negotiate with them in any way?
My focus is standing with Canadians and getting through this pandemic. The way to get through this pandemic is to continue making the challenging choices and sacrifices as citizens, as individuals, as communities, to keep each other safe, to trust science, to trust facts, to continue being there for each other. That is my focus. That is what I will stay focused on.
Can you explain the reason why you won't participate or meet with them? I mean, you've attended rallies on the Hill in the past, including during a Black Lives Matter protest and others. Is there a reason that you can give as for why you will not discuss or have any negotiations with this particular group?
I have attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect not just of science, but of the frontline health workers and, quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe, to put food on our tables. Canadians know where I stand. This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand with.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question est de Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau. Je me demandais comment est-ce que vous allez faire pour apaiser la grogne là, qui s'est exprimée dans les derniers jours à Ottawa. Je comprends qu'il y a des éléments extrémistes dans le mouvement, mais il y a aussi beaucoup de gens qui ne le sont pas, qui étaient à Ottawa. Qu'est-ce que vous allez faire pour apaiser leur colère?
Tout d'abord, je pense que tout le monde à travers le pays, qu'il soit ici à Ottawa ou non, est frustré. Tout le monde a de la grogne. Tout le monde est tanné de cette pandémie. Tout le monde est épuisé. Tout le monde veut que ça en finisse. Tout le monde voudrait bien qu'on puisse dire « OK, c'est fini » puis qu'on retourne à ce qu'on voudrait faire. Mais la vaste majorité des Canadiens savent que c'est pas en rouspétant qu'on va finir cette pandémie. C'est en se faisant vacciner. C'est en écoutant les meilleurs conseils de santé publique. Et la meilleure façon qu'on va pouvoir passer à travers, la meilleure façon qu'on va pouvoir continuer d'être là les uns pour les autres, c'est justement en démontrant qu'on comprend l'importance de suivre la science, les faits, les experts en santé, les experts en santé publique. C'est comme ça qu'on va sortir de cette pandémie. Et c'est sur ça que je vais me concentrer.
En suivi, Laurence?
Certains vous accusent d'avoir politisé la question de la vaccination obligatoire, entre autres durant la campagne électorale. Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ceux qui disent que vous portez une partie de la responsabilité là, pour la grogne qu'on voit s'exprimer à Ottawa depuis quelques jours?
Les Canadiens ont choisi de se faire vacciner à un taux plus élevé que presque n'importe quel autre pays dans le monde. On a vu à chaque étape les Canadiens choisir d'être là les uns pour les autres. En plus d'avoir un taux de vaccination plus élevé que beaucoup de nos pays pairs, on a aussi pu protéger et notre système de santé et nos aînés et voir rebondir notre économie de la bonne façon. Je comprends qu'il y a certaines personnes qui choisissent de rejeter la science, qui choisissent de rejeter l'entraide et le service et les sacrifices que font la vaste majorité des Canadiens, mais c'est leur choix. Mon choix, c'est de continuer d'être là pour les 90% des Canadiens qui, oui, sont tannés, mais qui savent que la façon qu'on va passer à travers, c'est en restant solidaires, en se respectant les uns les autres et en suivant les consignes de santé publique.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Tom Perry from CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Supporters of this movement will say that it's a small minority of people in this protest who are causing trouble. So is it fair to focus in on the obviously terrible behavior of some and paint all protesters with that brush?
I think, obviously, the right to free expression, the right to assembly, the right to make your displeasure known in a democracy is extraordinarily important and needs to be heeded and respected. But there have been many, many protests over the past years that I've seen, that I've been part of, that I've watched from a distance on Parliament Hill and elsewhere, where people come together angry about a certain thing, wanting something else to change, that don't see the level of hateful rhetoric, of swastikas, of abuse towards their fellow citizens. There is always a right to protest peacefully that I and others will defend fully as part of this democracy. There is not a right to incite violence, to perform acts of violence, or to spew hatred. And I think anyone who is part of this group who is disgusted by what the folks protesting alongside are doing needs to step up and take responsibility, condemn these actions, and look for other ways to express their displeasure.
Following up.
You talk about politicians exploiting people's fears. Who are you talking about, and what impact do you think they're having?
I think all politicians need to think very carefully about who they're supporting, about what messages they're putting out. We have seen over the past many, many months, conservative politicians sharing disinformation about vaccines, encouraging conspiracy theories online. And I think Aaron O'Toole is going to need to reflect very carefully on how he's walking a path that supports these people who do not represent truckers, let alone the vast majority of Canadians.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question de Boris Proulx, Le Devoir. La parole est à vous.
Merci. Monsieur le Premier ministre, est-ce que vous excluez faire quelconque concession aux camionneurs qui manifestaient?
Les défis auxquels on est en train de faire face dans nos chaînes d'approvisionnement sont pas dus aux politiques de vaccination, mais sont dus à la COVID-19. La meilleure façon de passer à travers ces moments difficiles pour les camionneurs, pour tous les Canadiens, c'est en continuant de respecter les consignes de santé publique, en continuant de se faire vacciner comme presque 90% des camionneurs l'ont fait. C'est sur ça que je vais me concentrer, pas sur ces manifestants qui ne respectent pas les faits, la science, ni pour plusieurs nos principes démocratiques.
En suivi?
Merci. En suivi, des manifestants disaient que le Canada était à l'origine de la décision américaine d'imposer la vaccination obligatoire de leur côté. Pouvez-vous nous dire si vous avez fait pression sur l'administration Biden pour qu'il fasse la même chose que le Canada?
Depuis les débuts, on m'a souvent posé des questions sur l'alignement ou le non-alignement entre nos politiques ici au Canada par rapport aux frontières avec les Américains. Il y a eu des choses sur lesquelles on s'est aligné, on s'est très bien travaillé. Il y a eu d'autres choses sur lesquelles on est moins aligné. Mais à chaque fois, je démontrais et j'insistais que chaque pays peut et doit faire ses propres décisions par rapport à sa sécurité publique. Mais évidemment, puisque nous suivons la même science et les mêmes genres de conseils d'experts. Ça ne doit pas être surprenant que les mêmes principes sont en jeu quand on amène des mesures pour protéger les citoyens.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question from Sanda McCharles, Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Yes, Prime Minister, you said that Aaron O'Toole has to think carefully, but he did meet with some truckers on Friday. Do you think that was an inappropriate gesture of support to truckers, or specifically about anyone else in terms of his caucus? And can you speak to McInerney's participation?
As part of our job as politicians, every single day, we make decisions about who to meet with, who to respond to, how to respond to them, who to engage with, how not just our engagements, but our example impacts on public discourse. If we choose to put up with and tacitly support conspiracy theorists and folks peddling disinformation, that's a reflection on what we choose to do as politicians and who we are as leaders. Obviously, I'm going to trust in Canadians' understanding of the kind of responsible leadership that is needed right now. And I'm sure Canadians are watching what all politicians are doing right now and remembering who is choosing to stand up for what and for whom, and what choices they are making as leaders. I think through this pandemic, Canadians have seen and have a right to expect responsible leadership. And unfortunately, that's not what we've always seen from the likes of Aaron O'Toole or even more, Maxime Bernier.
Following up.
Given the behavior you outlined today, what do you want to see the security forces on Parliament Hill and in downtown Ottawa do about the situation?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make sure that people are safe, first and foremost, that small businesses, restaurants in Ottawa can get back to work, that citizens can go to their jobs, that parliamentarians can continue to do the important work of serving Canadians, of upholding our democracy. Yes, there is a right to protest. There is a right to make your voices heard loudly and clearly. But there is not a right to shut down our democracy or our democratic processes. There is not a right to abuse, intimidate, and harass your fellow citizens who are trying to go about their business, trying to live their lives, and not necessarily in agreement with what you are doing.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, Raphaël Pirot, Agence QMI. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Je voulais savoir, donc, le ministre des Transports avait dit récemment comme quoi il voulait aller de l'avant avec, peut-être, il n'avait pas dit clairement, mais peut-être aller de l'avant avec l'obligation vaccinale pour les camionneurs entre les frontières. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que votre gouvernement, pense encore?
On est, comme vous savez, très clair sur le besoin du plus grand nombre possible de gens de se faire vacciner. On a amené des mandats de vaccination pour la fonction publique fédérale. On a amené des mandats de vaccination pour ceux qui veulent voyager à bord d'un avion, d'un train. Nous allons continuer d'encourager les gens de se faire vacciner. Pour l'instant, les mandats pour les camionneurs s'appliquent à la frontière canado-américaine.
En suivi?
Et donc, mais je voulais savoir, est-ce que c'est quelque chose qui est encore sur la table? Et si c'est encore sur la table, pensez-vous que ça risque de jeter de l'huile sur le feu?
Je ne veux pas aller trop loin dans des hypothétiques. On est en train de regarder, d'amener des mesures concrètes qui vont continuer de protéger les Canadiens. Et quand on pense que Les camionneurs sont à presque 90% déjà vaccinés. On sait que même sans avoir des mandats supplémentaires, des mandats domestiques, les gens sont en train de faire la bonne chose. Mais comme vous savez, depuis 2 ans, on a vu énormément de mesures et de choses qu'on a dû faire auxquelles on n'aurait pas pu s'imaginer il y a 3-4 ans. On va continuer de suivre la science. On va continuer de faire tout ce qui est nécessaire pour garder les gens en santé, en sécurité. Mais on va se concentrer sur les mesures qu'on est en train de faire maintenant et pas amener des théories hypothétiques sur des prochaines étapes qui pourraient être nécessaires ou peut-être pas.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Marika Walsh, the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking our call today. I just want to follow up on, sorry, I'm trying to mute my phone. I'm just trying to follow up on some of your responses about the protesters. I understand the concerns around many of the actions for many of the protesters, but I'm wondering if you as the Prime Minister need to engage with the fears and the concerns that others in the crowd raised about the vaccine. There seems to be a real concern for many of them about the safety of that vaccine, and I'm wondering if you are avoiding addressing that by only focusing on the much more hateful and nefarious elements of the protest this weekend.
Marika, anyone who thinks that I haven't been talking about how safe vaccines are has been listening to everything I've been saying over the past 2 years. Vaccines are safe and effective. The way we get through this public health crisis, get back to the things we love, is by trusting science, by trusting the facts, by being there for each other, by stepping up for each other. We have been hearing people hesitant about getting vaccinated for well over a year now. And we have been reaching out to them, community by community, individual by individual, at the highest level, but also in interpersonal contacts, to reassure people that vaccines are safe and effective, and that they are the way to get through this pandemic. So, yes, the concerns expressed by a few people gathered in Ottawa right now are not new, not surprising, are heard, but are a continuation of what we've unfortunately seen in disinformation and misinformation online, conspiracy theorists about microchips, about God knows what else that go with the tinfoil hats. We have been clear every step of the way that the work our frontline health workers, the work our scientists and researchers are doing, the people at Health Canada, the people working on these vaccines all around the world, is the work that will get us through this, get us back to the things we love.
Merci beaucoup, Sébastien. Thank you very much, Sébastien. Merci beaucoup à la média d'accepter notre invitation cet après-midi. The protests have been incredibly disruptive and continue to impact the safety and well-being of our residents. People have had the opportunity to voice their frustration against government policy, but as the old saying goes, they've worn out their welcome. I think it's time for them to go back to their communities, work with their local members of parliament and provincial parliament to address their grievances, but it's time for them to leave the downtown core. It's been very disruptive, very difficult for residents, small businesses, and the safety of the overall community. Our residents are a proud and caring community, a compassionate community, but they're frustrated with these protests directed at the federal and provincial governments and have been so disruptive on their daily lives. We've witnessed the desecration of cherished monuments like the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and the Terry Fox statue, displays of hate symbols like the Confederate flag and the swastika, and all types of bad behavior that have taken away the freedom of our residents to live without fear. Many residents have not slept for days due to the noise and disruptions, and many have been shut in due to the crowds, a lockdown imposed by the protest itself. Our residents have been through enough. These are not just minor inconveniences, but situations that have been debilitating for people who have already been through enough as a result of living through a global pandemic. We've had to close some businesses and daycares and inoculation centers. We've had to deal with aggressive behavior towards staff in our hotels, in our restaurants, and even at the Shepherds of Good Hope. Our police service has done an incredible job keeping things peaceful and ensuring that a potentially volatile situation does not escalate. Paramedics and first responders have had to deal with unruly and aggressive behavior from protesters and have managed to keep things under control with no deaths or serious injuries. As the capital of Canada, we're used to demonstration, but it's time for this one to move on. The Ottawa Police Service estimates policing costs for the protest of more than $800,000 per day. Businesses and organizations have been subjected to harassment and threats, and these disruptions have been financially debilitating to owners and staff. People who disagree with provincial and federal policies and legislation have the right to demonstrate, but they don't have the right to take their frustration out on people living in our community. C'est pas seulement la colline parlementaire, les édifices du gouvernement dans le centre-ville. Beaucoup de monde habite à la centre-ville, habite à la basse-ville, habite à la marché-bail. Et ce n'est pas juste pour les manifestants de continuer cette intimidation dans les quartiers résidentiels de notre ville. I understand. I want our residents, though, to understand that I understand their frustration. We're doing everything possible to bring this to an end peacefully. Again, I want to commend our partners, the Ottawa Police Service, and Chief Sloly will talk about the number of police services that have been helping us from Quebec and Ontario and the Federal Police Force, the Parliamentary Protective Service. We're very grateful. Merci aussi à tous les autres forces de police, les agents de police qui viennent d'Ottawa, dans tous les coins de la province de l'Ontario, la province du Québec et certainement le GRC et les personnalités qui est responsable pour la colline parlementaire. I also want to commend our city staff for the exceptional job that they have done to manage the situation and keep residents informed. Some of our staff have been harassed and verbally attacked, and this is completely unacceptable in a civil society that we live in. I know we're all tired and frustrated, and I thank those men and women on the front lines bringing a sense of peace and stability to our city. Finally, I want to thank our residents for their patience and understanding. It's no fun having a diesel vehicle on a residential street honking its horn every hour on the hour, spewing diesel fumes into the neighborhoods. This is why I've said time and time again, you've had your say, you've had your platform, you've got lots of media attention. I fundamentally disagree with the premise of your campaign because, quite frankly, masks and vaccinations are some of the few tools we have to fight COVID-19. But you've had your moment or your 15 minutes, time to move on, give back our city to our residents, and you go on your way to your community to raise these issues with your local members of parliament. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. We will now hear remarks from Councillor Diane Deans.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for joining in this press conference this afternoon. I want to start, I think, where the mayor left off by adding my voice to all of those who want to express their disgust and dismay at the events of the last number of days in our community. We have never seen the likes of this kind of civil disobedience that we are witnessing in our city today. And I want to speak directly to those citizens who have been most impacted by this abhorrent behavior that has been unfolding in our city. I want to tell you that I see you and I hear you, and I know that you are very frustrated and that it is hard to understand what is happening here and how it will ultimately come to an end. I completely understand your frustration. We are all very frustrated with the situation that we find ourselves in. We all want to get back to our lives. We want to get back to some semblance of normalcy. We want our childcare facilities to reopen and our libraries to reopen. We want to be able to walk safely to our grocery stores. We don't want to feel that we're being shut into our homes because of this. I understand the level of frustration. I also understand that this is a very volatile situation and it has the potential to escalate far beyond what we have seen. And as abhorrent as the acts of racism and violence have been in the city, they could be much worse. And the Ottawa Police Service and their police partners have been working first and foremost to ensure public safety of all of our citizens. They've been working to de-escalate, and the focus has been on de-escalation. There have been many questions, and I understand those questions. I've been asking them about why we haven't been enforcing city bylaws. I want you to know that it is my expectation as chair of the Police Services Board that the people who have involved themselves in criminal acts and acts of violence in our city be fully prosecuted. But right now, the focus has to be on ensuring the safety of every single citizen, ensuring the safety of the men and women of the police services that are here, that are working on the front lines of this event. And we have to know that we have the foremost leading experts working on this file, working with us, working to make decisions and choices in the best interest of safety in this community. And we have to trust. We have to trust right now that what the police are doing is de-escalating a situation and ensuring the safety of the public. And that's what I want to leave the public with. I know that, we can ask a lot of questions and there will be time for asking those questions when this is over. But right now we have to believe that the decisions that are being made in the interest of the public and in the best interest of public safety. This is an event like no other event we have witnessed in our city's history before. It is a national event. It is an event that is changed by virtue of having heavy trucks that can be used as weapons in this city. And the choices that are being made to ensure that we keep everyone safe as possible. So I, like all of you, feel the frustration. I know that our patience is worn thin. I know that we would all like this to come to an ending just as soon as possible. But I just ask that you consider the work that is being done and know that the decisions that are being made with the best possible evidence. And evidence, by the way, is being collected. Evidence is being collected on people who are disobeying our laws and engaging in criminal activity and racist behavior. That evidence is collected and that those individuals will be dealt with. So I just want to leave you with that. And our goal is to make sure harm comes to no one and that we get our city returned to us just as soon as possible. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the citizens for their patience. I want to take the opportunity to thank Chief Sloly and the men and women of the Ottawa Police Service. I want to thank all of the other police services who are here helping. I want to thank the City of Ottawa who have really been great partners with Ottawa Police through this entire event. And I want to, again, thank everyone for their patience. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Councillor Deans. We will now hear remarks from Chief Peter Sloly. Chief, you're on mute.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the Mayor and the Chair for their comments that preceded mine. I'm going to provide you with an update since the last media session we held on Friday, prior to the commencement of the core of the demonstrations that have arrived in the nation's capital. You'll recall at that last media briefing that we described this as a unique demonstration. We've heard some of those elements from Chair Deans and Mayor Watson. For those of you that live in the downtown core of Ottawa, you will have seen that materialized over the last 4 days. And the experiences of our frontline officers, our civilian members, our partners from national, provincial, and municipal agencies have experienced the same thing. This is a demonstration unique in nature, massive in scale, polarizing in context, dangerous in literally every other aspect of the event itself. From this started on the west coast of Canada and spread across the country, it has been fluid, ever-changing, and increasingly more difficult to manage. That has remained from the beginning, and it continues to this current day. I want to provide you with updated information from the course of events that took place through Friday afternoon into Saturday, Saturday evening, into Sunday, Sunday evening, into Monday. As we talked about on Friday, the ingress of thousands of vehicles, particularly heavy trucks, caused almost immediate traffic gridlock through Friday into traffic chaos on Saturday and Sunday. As we told you on Friday, that ingress level of vehicles and demonstrators would make large areas of the downtown core, as well as the access routes in and out of the city, bridges, 400 series highways, major thoroughfares, would become difficult to navigate for pedestrians, cyclists, motorists of any kind. It would create situations, pockets of dangerous areas for people to travel through. It would require our residents and our businesses to get updated information from ourselves, our city partners, and other agencies around the current state of issues and risks, and to make informed decisions for the safety of themselves, their families, and their businesses. For the most part, people who have been directly affected have been incredibly patient, incredibly resilient, and they have suffered a lot. I want to recognize those people who live, work, or need to commute through the downtown core of Ottawa. They have been incredibly impacted, negatively impacted by the course of demonstrations and the impact those demonstrations have had on their lives and their livelihoods. We're incredibly concerned about the stress they've been under, not just in the last several days, but in the last months and years of the pandemic. We're very much aware of this, and we're doing everything we possibly can to mitigate those impacts against individuals, families, and businesses. At the same time, I need to let everyone know the incredible level of bravery, compassion, professionalism, and dedication of all Ottawa Police Service members, all of the partner agencies that have joined us here in the last 4 days, all of our partners at the City of Ottawa, anyone who's played any direct role in supporting the operations around this demonstration. They have been an incredible group of individuals who've kept this city safe during a situation that could have become riotous. It could have led to significant and severe injuries, and it could have led to the loss of life. None of that has occurred over the last 4 days. Let me repeat. No injuries, no deaths, no riots in the last 4 days in the nation's capital, despite the fact that we have a global cause, national protest, tens of thousands of individuals from a wide variety of causes who have gathered to actively demonstrate 24 hours a day for the last 4 days. All of that coupled with thousands of heavy trucks, SUVs, and cars driving into the city and congregating in the core of this city, 24 hours a day for 4 days a week. I want to specifically thank the following agencies who have come from the federal, provincial, and municipal levels: RCMP, Ontario Provincial Police, Gatineau Police, Sûreté du Québec, London Police Services, Hamilton Police Services, Peel Region Police Services, Toronto Police Services, York Region Police Services, Durham Region Police Services. They have sent their members of their organization with experience and expertise, professionalism and compassion. They've joined under our incident command system, and they have provided very needed, very timely, very professional, very effective services to keep this city safe, to keep our community safe, to keep our residents safe, to keep our city workers safe, to maintain emergency routes for fire, ambulance, and police, to ensure the safety of our healthcare centers, our hospitals, our vaccination clinics, to ensure as much as possible the continuation of business within the city and the lifeblood of the city in terms of our ability for our residents to receive emergency services. There were reports of denial of service, injuries, and trauma related directly to the demonstration. I can tell you that is not true. We have verification from our ambulance services, fire services, and police services. While there were delayed responses and in certain cases gaps in service delivery, nobody was directly affected in regards to ambulatory service requirements, emergency services requirements. That despite the fact of the massive traffic chaos and gridlock that we saw, not just in the core, but on our major access ingress routes in the bridges and 400 series highways. That is an incredible level of coordination and professionalism that was demonstrated over the last 4 days. Going forward, I want to be clear. Public safety remains our paramount priority. The safety of our residents, the safety of our businesses, the safety of our visitors, the safety of our partners, the safety of our service members, and yes, the safety of all those who've chosen to come here to demonstrate, whether they live in this city or they've come from other locations across the country. Effective tomorrow, we are redeploying our market neighborhood resource teams, our Centertown neighborhood resource teams, our crime prevention officers back into their neighborhoods, into the market, into Lower Town, into Sandy Hill, into Centertown. Their jobs will be to provide direct support services, safety services, customer service to the residents and business owners, the not-for-profit sector, the service providers in and around the core. Unfortunately, we needed those officers over the last 4 days. Every single one of those officers were deployed fully and continually. They are tired, they're stressed, and they're strained. But every one of them know the stress and strain that was imposed upon their communities. And they're going back to serve and protect those communities effective tomorrow. The situation of the demonstration has scaled down over the last 12 hours. Let me repeat. The situation of the demonstration has scaled down over the last 12 hours. We want that trend to continue until this demonstration comes to a complete end. I cannot guarantee you that right now, but I can guarantee you that every effort at negotiation and coordination, de-escalation has continued throughout the last 4 days and will continue until the complete end of this demonstration. We will maintain a large contingent of our neighborhood and crime prevention officers in the immediate communities around where the core demonstrations are taking place to be able to provide greater services, a greater sense of safety, and greater interactions with those who've been most affected. Within the next 24 hours, we are going to be creating a hotline for hate incidents, hate crimes, any offenses directly related to the demonstrations, including criminal offenses, threats, assaults, hate-related crimes, mischiefs, anything that any member of the community, any visitor, any demonstrator has faced in terms of criminal activity, a hotline will be established to receive those reports. There will be an immediate and continuous investigation until we have resolved it by way of charge and prosecution. We have continued our relationship and working relationship with the Crown's Office. We have the intelligence officers and the investigative officers and multi-jurisdictional support from British Columbia to St. John's, from Nunavut to the GTA, to make sure that no matter where you live, no matter where your vehicle's registered, if you've come here and committed a crime, if you have committed a hate crime, you will be investigated. We will look for you. We will charge you. If necessary, we'll arrest you, and we will pursue prosecutions against you. We have several active criminal investigations undergoing, from bribery to threats to assaults to the dangerous operation of vehicles. They will continue. Please report to us any other matters that we are not aware of. We have had meetings throughout the last 24 hours. I have had calls with the mayor, the chair, council members who represent the wards in the immediate area of the demonstration sites. We have had meetings with the city councillor, city legal. I have had direct meetings today with Commissioner Brenda Lucky, Commissioner Tom Carrick of the Ontario Provincial Police, their executive staff and operational leads in the National Capital Region. We have continued to request levels of resources and support from our partner agencies, federally, provincially, and municipally, and they have all been generous in providing those requests, those resource requests, and are continuing to support us as we go forward. We continue negotiations with the core organizers of the core protest. We are emphatic in our desire to resolve these demonstrations as quickly and safely and effectively as possible. That will continue until the very end. All options are on the table. Through negotiation, through to enforcement. All options remain on the table to safely and effectively resolve this demonstration. We will work in full coordination with the City of Ottawa. My thanks to Steve Kanalakis and his amazing team. You're going to hear from Kim Ayotte very shortly. We're going to work in full cooperation with our federal, provincial, and municipal policing partners, national security agencies, and other public sector agencies. As we have done from the first day, we will do so to the last day.
Thank you for listening. And there has been a lot going on with the protests and the convoy of the truckers in Ottawa, and those who have decided to vandalize or take advantage of the protests for unreasonable reasons, committed hate crimes and things, they should be tracked down and they should be dealt with. And we're glad to hear that that the local police is working in conjunction with other policing agencies to ensure that hate crimes are not going to be tolerated. It is good to protest. It is good to at times cause a disruption, and cause a disruption with the people that we need to deliver that message to. We should not harass or harangue those individuals who are simply trying to get the job done to support our communities. We should not deliver hate messages to people. We should keep our protests peaceful, nonviolent, and simply deliver our message and then go home. To those who in the convoy who did exactly that, we would like to commend you and thank you for delivering delivering your message in a peaceful manner. And we hope that the mayor, the council people of Ottawa, as well as the policing agencies, do deal with those who did not act in a peaceful manner, because that should not happen, and we should always remain peaceful. It does sound like the protest is winding down. People are, as their police chief mentioned, that people probably are going home because the message is delivered. The media response was tremendous, and it is time to leave. The mayor of Ottawa has said that, hey, welcome's over. Thank you for visiting. Time to go home. And disruption for 3 days should be enough to let people know that, hey, we do need to actually speak up and let our public and elected officials know that, that we need to have more information delivered. We need to have more things happening so that we all can stay informed. This isn't just simply about getting do I get a vaccine or do I not get a vaccine. This is a message of we shouldn't be forcing people to get it. We shouldn't be applying sweeping mandates in order to get people to do it. We should be our government should be doing this in a gentle way that guides people into what they want, not by strong arm and force. So with that, thank you for listening to our show, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening today, and thank you for supporting us with our sponsors. Please go to depictions.media for more information, and click on our contact link and let us know how we can help bring your story and help bring us to a better world. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.